morning, church. I'm certainly happy that you are here today. I would encourage you to pray for those who are not here this morning, whether of their own will or circumstances out of their control. We have several of our number who are away for Challenge Youth Conference in Pigeon Forge, and they will be back with us, I believe, this evening. So pray for their safe arrival back home this afternoon. Something that was failed to be mentioned in our announcements is, we mentioned this morning in the Bible class hour, is Mike Johnson, that is Jerry and Sue Johnson's son, has a perforated colon, and he is in the hospital in Indiana. So add him to your prayer list and be praying for him this week that all will go well in that situation. I invite your attention this morning to Psalm 37. And at the outset, I want you to be aware this morning that this is not a typical sermon that I would preach. And by that, I mean it may not be structured in the way that sermons are normally structured. We're not going to have points 1, 2, 3, and 4 this morning. Rather, I want to look at the whole text of Psalm 40, read those verses and make a few comments, because I believe there are many things there that will help us in our walk with Christ. As you're turning there, I would like to share with you a story that I heard. Happened a long time ago, where a man sought the painting of perfect peace. And in searching for the painting of perfect peace, this man invited, however many artists wanted to participate, were invited to this challenge, to portray a picture of perfect peace. And the challenge stirred the imagination of those artists everywhere, and paintings arrived for this competition from far and wide. And finally, the day approaches for the paintings to be revealed, and as the judges uncover one peaceful scene after another, the viewers all clapped and they cheered at these magnificent pieces of art. And the tensions grew in this competition, and the judges had narrowed it down to only 2 paintings. And as they unveiled the first painting, a hush fell over the crowd, for the painting portrayed a mirror-smooth lake reflecting the glory of a lacy green birch under the soft blush of an evening sky. And along the grassy shore, a flock of sheep grazed undisturbed. And you might imagine to yourself and think, well, that must have been the winner. I can't imagine anything more peaceful than that. And yet, as the judges turned to the other painting and they pulled the cover back from it, the crowd gasped in surprise, for what they saw was anything from what they expected. What was found was a tumultuous waterfall cascading down a rocky precipice. The crowd could almost feel its cold, penetrating spray. Stormy gray clouds threatened to explode with lightning, wind, and rain. And in the midst of those thundering noises and bitter chill, a spindly tree clung to the rocks at the edge of the falls. One of the branches of that tree reached out in front of the torrential waters, as if foolishly seeking to experience its full power. And on that branch sat a little bird who had built a nest in the elbow of that branch. Content and undisturbed in her stormy surroundings, she was resting on her eggs. With her eyes closed and her wings ready to cover her little ones, she manifested peace that transcends all earthly turmoil. I believe that picture was the winner of that competition. What was it that allowed that bird to have such a state of peace? And how is it that we today can have that kind of peace, the peace that the Bible describes as a peace that passes all understandings, that only Jesus Christ can give? I chose Psalm 37 for our text this morning because the psalm has a lot to do with feelings that probably most of us have had before or will have in the future. These psalms here have a lot to do with our own emotions and our own feelings. And the issue that we find in Psalm 37, the writer dealing with, is how do we handle things when evil seems to win? That's what the psalm is about. What do we do when we see sin in the world and wicked people in the world prospering? What should our reaction be? How should we feel about that? And so these psalms are not just stories, as it were, from the ivory towers. They're for us, and they teach us about life, and they answer a lot of life's questions, because let's face it, I myself have had that same line of questioning before. How is it that God can allow such sinful and wicked people to prosper in the world, and sometimes His own saints are destitute of many of those same blessings? So we see in Psalm 37, especially in those first 10 verses, what we should do as God's people and how we should feel as God's people. Let's look at the text this morning. Verse 1 really sets the tone for the entirety of Psalm 37. And the writer says, "Do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the workers of iniquity." That's what the psalm is about. All 40 verses revolve around that theme found in verse 1. You know, there are evildoers from the beginning of time. And there will be countless numbers of evildoers when Christ returns. And there will never be a time when there are not evildoers, when there are not wicked people. And so this psalm is considered to be a psalm of David. And David says, don't fret yourself. Don't be concerned. Don't be anxious over this idea of people who prosper that are practicing evil. Don't worry about that. Don't be envious of evildoers. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, why would anyone be envious of an evildoer? And I can understand in part why sometimes people are envious of them, because we see their lifestyle, the lifestyle of the rich and famous portrayed in television and different types of media. And it's such a seemingly grand and happy life that they live. And sometimes we might think to ourselves, well, why can't I have what they have? And that's what David's writing to combat. He says, don't feel that way. Don't be anxious about those. Don't worry. Don't fret yourself about those things. I mean, when you look at things like that, you rarely see people who are devoutly religious people who have those kinds of blessings. Oh, I doubt I'll ever have a mansion in this life, but I've got something that's much better than any mansion. Don't be envious of the unrighteous, the ungodly, the wicked. Yeah, they will have some of the nicest toys. They always have. David says, don't fret. Don't get worked up over those things. Don't feel anxiety over them. Yes, they may appear to be winning, but he says, let God deal with them. And that's verse 2. Look at verse 2 of Psalm 37. For they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. I love the illustration David uses there, and it's one that we can all relate to. You know, when springtime comes in just a couple of weeks and that grass begins to grow, we're going to have to begin cutting the grass down. And that grass that seems to have such a vibrant and healthy life is just mowed down. We don't want it to grow so tall. We want our yards to be beautiful. And that's how David pictures these wicked, unrighteous, evil people. God will cut them down, mow them down like the grass. Yes, they might prosper for 30, 40, 50, 60, or 70 years, or even more than that. But compared to eternity, friends, it's nothing. David says it's nothing, because as long as they remain evil and ungodly, they will be cut down. You know, James discussed a similar idea, and he illustrates how our lives are here but for just a short little while, and then they vanish away. And that's true of the wicked as well. And so even if they do prosper, even if they do have all of the nice things, even for a century is nothing compared to eternity. And David, by inspiration, says, don't worry about them. Don't fret about those things. Don't worry. Don't get worked up how they seem to prosper. God will deal with them in His time. So you might be saying to yourself, well, what do we do? What's the advice? How do we live our life then? And he begins to answer that question in verse 3. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on His faithfulness. Don't spend your time being worked up about that the wicked seem to be prospering. David says it's a waste of time. You can't do anything about the way they prosper anyway, so don't waste your time. And I want you to think about how some of these people get their wealth. I'm not saying all rich people are like this, but a lot of rich people get their wealth in unholy ways, ways that are evil and wicked. Some of the wealthiest people in the world are responsible for drug cartels and things of that nature. And I venture to say that no one in this room is willing to live that kind of a lifestyle just to have that kind of wealth. So David said, don't worry about them. Let God handle them. You, on the other hand, put your trust in God. David says, don't worry about it. Don't get worked up about it. Trust in the Lord and do good. Now, in Proverbs 24, verses 19 and 20, we have the same thing stated almost verbatim. And there the wise man says, do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the wicked, for there will be no prospect for the evil man. The lamp of the wicked will be put out. That's why you want to put your trust in God. That's why you don't want to fret about those evildoers. They have no everlasting future. Yes, they might have a wonderful life here on earth, but David says that's where it ends. In one sense, they're being led, as it were, to the slaughter. They don't realize it, but they're going down the wrong path. It looks good, but when you stop and consider its end, you realize that is not the case. And that's the conclusion of Psalm 73. The psalmist there, David, says, I'm a struggling sinner, or a struggling saint, rather, and I look over it and I see successful sinners living their life. How do I deal with this, God? And the conclusion he says is this, then I understood their end. And that's what he's trying to get us to understand here. Don't worry about them. Don't fret over them. Don't be envious. God will take care of them. And so instead of wasting our time fretting over those evil people, instead of filling our life with doing what we need to, rather instead fill our life doing with what is good. Do good. Dwell in the land. Feed on His faithfulness. That's the remedy. Trust in the Lord because He will take care of you. And then fill your life with doing good. Don't worry about them. Don't let the wicked and their prosperity in any way take away from your life. That's the best advice. Just be content. Be content with what you have. Now, he says this, dwell in the land and feed on God's faithfulness. By that, I believe he means to feed on the fact that God has promised us the things that we need. That's Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these other things will be added to you. Food, clothing, and raiment is particularly what he was dealing with. We don't really need any more than that anyways, right? And so if that's all you've got in life, count yourself blessed. Don't be concerned about the wicked who have all of those things, because like everything else, it'll be burned up. It'll all be gone one day. It won't last and you can't send it on to heaven. But friends, there is something that you can send on to heaven ahead of you. Jesus says, these things, though, you cannot. They'll be destroyed. So don't be concerned with the wicked and what they have. David says, you be concerned with what you have and doing good with what you have. Be content. Look at verse 4. Delight yourself in the Lord also, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. What do you mean, Dave? Focus on the Lord. Trust in the Lord. Put your delight in the Lord, and He'll give you what you really need. If that's the way you live your life, He'll take care of you. Because He gives us what we need. But really, we need to meditate on Him. Focus on Him, not on the evil in the world. Friends, there will always be evil in the world. And no matter how much you focus on it, no matter how much you worry about it or fret or concern yourself about it, evil will always exist. And so the prospering sinner delights in what he has on the earth. The righteous saint, rather, is to delight in the Lord. You might remember Paul saying to young Timothy in 1 Timothy 6, beginning in verse 6, godliness with contentment is great gain. Notice he doesn't say anything about wickedness and contentment. No, the wicked are not usually content people. But righteousness with contentment is great gain. We brought nothing into this world. It's certain that we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. Food and clothing. Nowhere does Paul say it's wrong to have nice things. No. But don't let that be your pursuit in life. He's not saying that we are to live in poverty, but rather whatever you do have, use it for good. Trust in the Lord and do good. So what are we supposed to do? Look at verses 5 and 6. And there he says, commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in Him, and He shall bring it to pass. He shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. See, commit yourselves to God and to His will. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. And so when we live a contented life and we're not filled with anxiety, when we look at all the stuff that evil people have, then we're setting a good example for others. Letting a light shine that we're not of this world. This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. We have a different home we're preparing for, and that's what David says we should focus on. Verse 7, then he says, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass. How many wicked schemes, friends, have you seen brought to pass in the last few years? Government corruption, gang-related activities, rape, murder, theft, idolatry, adultery. How many wicked schemes have we seen come to pass, just say in the last 10 years? See, a lot of people seemingly prosper while engaging in those wicked schemes. There will always be people who do those kinds of things. It was happening in David's day. It's happening in our day. Not much we can do about it. People have always come up with wicked schemes and plans, and oftentimes the poor are those who are defrauded there. Time and again in the law of Moses, God mentions that He cares for the poor people, that He's watching over them. He knows what's happening, and He's concerned. So David says, don't fret about them. God will take care of them. Yes, there will be wicked people who prosper. Yes, there will be those who accumulate wealth and resources, but don't fret over them because God knows exactly what they're doing. God knows. God knew what would happen with all of the wicked schemes and things that have happened in the past few years. Do you think God knew what was happening on September 11, 2001? You better believe it. Do you think God will bring justice to those people who are involved in it? You better believe it. Did it seem like they were prospering? Yes, but don't worry about those things. See, God's in control. It's all in His hand. Look at verse 8. He gives some more advice. He says, cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret. It only causes harm. You see, friends, when we're jealous and envious of the people who have all of these kinds of things like the nicest homes, cars, boats, all of these fine and fancy toys, don't fret over them. Sometimes we get angry over the fact that they have so many things, but why? Why get angry? What good is it going to do? David says it only causes harm, and you know what? It doesn't cause any harm to them. It only harms me. When I get jealous and envious, when I get angry over those kinds of things, it hurts me. And so don't waste our time and effort and energy being jealous and envious of those people because it doesn't help. It does no good. And then in verse 9 he says, evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait on the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. The ones who really will get the treasures are those who wait on the Lord. Although those who live an evil and a wicked life seem to be prospering, they're not. At least not for eternity's sake. We will if we're living a righteous life, if we're waiting on the Lord and trusting in Him. Now in verses 9 and 10, he turns his attention again to the evildoers. He says, for the evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait on the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall be no more. Indeed, you will look carefully for his place, but it shall be no more. You see, that 100 years that people live, sometimes it passes quickly by. And they might have a wonderful life for several decades, but then they will be no more. You know, when you think about the past historically, people who were evil and people who accumulated all kinds of things and wealth, where are they now? Where are they? They're dead. They're dead. They're gone. They are no more. You can look for them all you want, but you'll not find them. They're gone. And the same thing is true still today. The ones who are prospering now and doing things that are illegal and immoral, what happens to them? They die just like the rest of humanity. And they will face the judgment just like the rest of humanity. And so why be jealous and get angry and envious over those who have such wealth and prosperity? It doesn't harm them, it only harms you. And you know what, friends? Being angry and jealous and envious shows us something. When we have those kinds of attitudes, it shows that we're discontent. See, anger and jealousy and envy sometimes shows that we are discontent with the things that we have. And if we think to ourselves, well, I see old sleazy Steve down the road there and the kind of life that he lives and all of the things that he has, and we might get angry with God and say, God, I'm trying my best here. I'm living the life that you want me to live. Why can't I have the things that old sleazy Steve has? It doesn't do any bit of good. That's what we want to avoid. Avoid those kinds of thoughts and feelings and those attitudes. And now he begins to warn the wicked. Look at verses 11 through 13. But the meek shall inherit the earth and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. Notice the emphasis there on peace. We'll come back to that idea in a few minutes. The wicked plots against the just and gnashes at him with his teeth. The Lord laughs at him, for he sees that his day is coming. Now, I want you to think about something, friends. You read about the Lord laughing at people a few times in the Scriptures. And as far as I have understood the Bible, that is never a good thing. The Lord is pictured here as laughing at those wicked and evil people because He sees the end of what will happen to them. The Bible always uses that phrase in a negative way. He sees the day coming and so He laughs. The wicked may not see their day coming. They don't know what's going to happen. But they will one day. They won't escape it. They don't realize that they're not taking those things with them. They think that this life is all that there is. And yet we as believers, as followers of Christ, we understand there's something better. There's something more coming. Verses 14 and 15 says, the wicked have drawn the sword and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy, to slay those who were of upright conduct. But look at verse 15. He says, their sword shall enter their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. See, what they intend to do to others is what they're going to get back. And sometimes that happens in life. We discussed this morning about Balaam. That's what happened to Balaam. Balaam tried his best to curse God's people, and God turned the tables on him. And so he got what he was trying to do for other people, or do to other people. You see, sometimes the wicked get what is coming to them in this life. Not all of them, but some of them do. But one day, all of them will receive the just recompense of their reward. Verse 16 says, a little that a righteous man has is better than the riches of many wicked. Why is that true? Why is it better to have a little bit as a righteous man than to have the riches of many wicked? Because it was gotten in righteousness. Because it was received in a way that was honest and filled with integrity. You see, when the just people earn those things and receive those things, we can be glad about it. And it's far better than all of the things combined that the wicked have gotten in an evil and sinful way. Friends, no wonder we're not to worry about them because of how they got them. And again, I venture to say none of us are probably willing to get those kinds of riches and that kind of wealth in the way that those evil and wicked people do. Don't worry about them. God has it under control. Verses 17 and 18 says, the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous. The Lord knows the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. You see, friends, what we're planning for is eternal. It lasts forever and ever. It's never ending. And Peter speaks a lot about that eternal inheritance. We receive that inheritance because we have not laid up for ourselves treasures on the earth, but rather we're laying up treasures that are in heaven. That's the inheritance. But you see, the wicked are only thinking about this life and this existence and this inheritance. That's all they care about. And you know, I might look at myself and realize, yes, you know what? I'm weak, I'm fragile, I'm frail, and sometimes I don't have as many things as I would like to have. But the Bible still says God upholds the righteous with His hand. And that's not the only time the psalmist is going to say something here like that. I might not have the finest toys, I might not be living the life of luxury, but the Lord upholds me. I don't have to worry about anything. He's got it under control. Verses 19 and 20, he says, they shall not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied. That's the righteous people. But the wicked shall perish. And the enemies of the Lord, like the splendor of the meadows, shall vanish. Into smoke they shall vanish away. And so he warns the wicked that their riches cannot buy them the way into the next life. They don't have that power. Matter of fact, riches tend to do just the opposite. That's the warning. Wicked people, be careful with your riches. Verse 21 says, the wicked borrows and does not repay, but the righteous, notice, shows mercy, and gives. Why is that so important? Why is it so important? The righteous do what? When the righteous man sees someone who is oppressed, who is without, who is destitute, someone who is in poverty, what does a righteous man do? He shows mercy and he gives. They give. That's one way we send our treasures on into heaven. That's how we are laying them up. We show mercy and we give. You see, if we want an inheritance in heaven, we ought to be doing that. Show mercy and give to people. Verses 22 through 25, those blessed by him shall inherit the earth, but those cursed by him shall be cut off. The steps, notice, of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Though he shall fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. I've been young, and now I'm old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread. Now, nowhere does the Bible teach that the righteous will be the wealthiest people on earth, or that they will not have difficult times. But the Bible, friends, does teach that God will not abandon the righteous people. That's the guarantee. God upholds us with his hand. He will not forsake us. Well, why? Why doesn't God forsake us? The answer is in verse 26. For he is ever merciful and lends. His descendants are blessed. Depart from evil and do good, and dwell evermore. For the Lord loves justice and does not forsake his saints. They are preserved forever, but the descendants of the wicked shall be cut off. The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell in it forever. I want you to notice how many times the psalmist uses that idea of inheritance. The important thing is that we are inheriting something eternal. That's the important thing. See the difference? The difference of the end of each of those paths. One leads to everlasting destruction. One leads to everlasting life. Now, which did you want to be on? Which would you rather be on? Well, in verses 30 and 31, he says, the mouth of the righteous speaks wisdom, and his tongue talks of justice. The law of God is in his heart. None of his steps shall slide. You see, God is watching over us. He won't cast us off if we're living the righteous life. We mentioned earlier again this morning with Balaam and the statement that he made, let me die the death of the righteous. And if we wish to die the death of the righteous, we must be living the life of the righteous. You want to lay up treasures in heaven and reserve that inheritance? Do good, have mercy, give to the needy, visit those who are in need. Do what you can for other people. That's the difference between the righteous and the wicked. Righteous people show mercy and do good. Wicked people store up for themselves. So don't be concerned when you see evil people in the world with all of the nice things, because they'll be cut off, all of them. Then the end of the psalm talks about the righteous retribution that comes to these wicked people. Notice verses 32 through 37. The wicked watches the righteous and seeks to slay him. The Lord will not leave him in his hand, nor condemn him when he is judged. That's the righteous, of course. Wait on the Lord and keep his way, and he shall exalt you to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, you shall see it. I have seen the wicked in great power, and spreading himself like a native green tree. Yet he passes away, and behold, he was no more. Indeed, I sought him, but he could not be found. Mark the blameless man, and observe the upright, for the future of that man is peace. Notice that. That's why I titled the lesson the way I did, A Recipe for Peace. Notice the promise. The righteous will have peace. The unrighteous, the evil, wicked, sinful man, no, not so much. Because they're too concerned about this world, themselves, and what they will do with what they have. That's like the rich farmer. You remember he says to himself, I've got to tear down my barns and build greater barns, so I'll have somewhere to store my fruits and my goods. Then I'll take my ease, eat, drink, and be merry for many years. Well, you see, if he didn't have those many things to begin with, he wouldn't have had to worry about tearing down his barns and building something bigger. See, sometimes less really is more. And friends, life does not consist in the abundance of our possessions. Even though the Bible tells us that, the wicked and evil people can't see it. The world doesn't see it that way. The world says there's only one way to measure success, and that is by how much you have. How many toys do I have? But the Bible says the opposite. Friends, our life is about what we've sent on to heaven. Let's look at the last few verses here. But the transgressors shall be destroyed together. The future of the wicked shall be cut off. But the salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their strength in time of trouble. Now I want you to see that. The righteous people, their strength in time of trouble is the Lord, and that's who they go to. But where do the wicked go? You see, the wicked cannot go to the Lord in times of trouble. They have no outlet. They have no avenue to the Lord because they don't have a relationship with Him. So where do they go? They trust in their uncertain riches, as Paul warns Timothy not to do. And then he ends in verse 40 by saying, "And the Lord shall help them and deliver them. He shall deliver them from the wicked and save them because they trust in Him." Friends, that is the recipe for peace. Don't be concerned about what Sleazy Steve has. Don't be concerned about the wicked and all of the toys and fancy things they have. You concern yourself about what you have and do good with it. Trust in the Lord, dwell in the land, feed on His faithfulness. Now, I want you to think about two thoughts this morning. These are not original to me, but I think they're important to our discussion. Our earthly existence, that is the righteous, the just, holy people, our earthly existence is as close to hell as we will ever get. Think about it. If you're living a righteous life, this earth is as close to hell as you'll ever get. But the opposite is also true. You see, the wicked, their earthly existence is as close to heaven as they will ever get. Now think about that. If that's true, and I know it is, why then would we envy someone who this is heaven to them? It's true for the wicked and the evil. This is their heaven. Nothing good awaits for them. Why would you be envious of them and want what they have? Now, friends, that's a sobering thought. That makes us think hard about our earthly existence and what it's all about. See, we're not citizens of this world. We're citizens of a heavenly kingdom. Why then would we store up things in this world which will soon be destroyed when we could be storing things up for our eternal home? Friends, don't fret about the people who think this is their heaven. Don't be filled with anxiety when you see the wicked and evil people prosper. Their prosperity is very shortly lived. A few decades at most, but ours will be forever. Friends, to start laying up for yourselves treasures in heaven means that you must be a citizen of the kingdom of God. If you're not a citizen of the kingdom, if you're not a child of God, you've never obeyed the gospel, come and let us help you with that today. All it takes is a faith that Jesus is who He said He was. To turn away from your wickedness and turn to God in repentance, confessing the sweet name of Jesus and being immersed for the forgiveness of sins. Then you can be a citizen of the heavenly kingdom. Then you can lay up for yourself treasure in heaven. Maybe you're already a citizen of that kingdom and you find yourself anxious and worried and fretting about the evil people who are prospering. Let us help you with that. Let us pray for you that you could open your eyes and see their end, to begin trusting in God again, to dwell in His land, to feed on His faithfulness, to do good. Maybe this is your need this morning. Maybe you need something else. Whatever it is, let us help you right now as we come together and sing.
On behalf of the Lawnville Road Church of Christ, I want to thank you for joining us today for our worship. If you ever have an opportunity, we invite you to join us at our physical location at 1301 Lawnville Road in Kingston, Tennessee. We hope you will come and experience the simplicity of New Testament Christianity, to learn about God and to become a part of His family. If you have questions, if you would like to know more about the Bible, or if you would like a home Bible study, feel free to contact us by calling 865-717-0444. Or for more information, please visit our website at www.lawnvilleroadcoc.org. Again, we thank you, and we hope you have a blessed day.